Welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast, where you will discover practical strategies to inspire you to boost the health and nutrition of your kids. I'm Jessica Donovan, a qualified naturopath specialising in kids' health, and I want to make it as easy as possible for you to raise healthy and happy kids. Let's get into it. Hello, welcome. Jessica Donovan here, and it is an honour to be in your ears today. I hope you're doing something lovely. Maybe you're out for a walk, maybe you're doing the dishes or doing some housework. I know I often listen to podcasts when I'm pottering around, cleaning, but I also listen to podcasts when I'm out walking, although I have been trying to go for more walks with nothing in my ears. You know, we are so bombarded with information, and I listen to a variety of different podcasts, lots of health related podcasts, business related podcasts, but also I love listening to conversations and stories, but sometimes we just need that break from input into our ears, don't we? Anyway, I'm talking to you at the moment, but just a little nudge to, enjoy some quiet time sometimes as well, whether it's, sipping on a cup of tea or going for a walk with nothing in your ears. I think there is something very regulating about just being with ourselves with no input at all. But I digress from the topic of today's podcast. We're talking about one of my favourite topics today, gut health. If you've been listening to this podcast for any length of time, you would have heard me talk about gut health in various different ways over the days, weeks, months, years you may have been listening to this podcast. We're going to be talking today specifically about the hidden signs of gut imbalance in kids that you might be missing. So when we think about gut issues or gut imbalances in kids, we often might think of tummy aches, constipation, diarrhea, food intolerances, reflux. But what we also need to be aware of is that some of the biggest red flags that our kids' gut health is out of whack, out of balance, it needs some attention, aren't related to digestive health at all. In fact, a lot of kids can be free of those typical digestive symptoms, but still have issues with gut imbalance. And, over the years of working with clients and supporting members in our Natural Super Kids Club membership, I can just think of many, many stories where a child might present with eczema or constant infections or enlarged tonsils and adenoids or ADHD, issues with mood and behavioural issues associated with potentially being diagnosed with ADHD. And so many times when we dig a bit deeper, we realise that there are imbalances within the gut. And when we address these imbalances within the gut and we start to improve a child's gut health generally, we always see improvements in things like eczema or any inflammatory conditions like enlarged tonsils and adenoids, in immunity and how resilient kids are, how often they get sick, how quickly they bounce back from sickness. And of course, those behavioural changes as well. In fact, last week's episode, we talked specifically about the role that gut health plays in anxiety and mood issues in kids. So listen back to that one if that topic is of interest in you. So today in this episode, we're uncovering the hidden signs of gut imbalance in kids and what you can do about them. So let's talk through some of those overlooked non-digestive symptoms that kids often present with when they do have gut imbalances. And I'm going to group them together. So skin issues, anytime there's a skin issue, whether it's eczema, whether it's rashes, whether it's dry patches, whether it's skin infections like molluscum, we're always thinking about the gut. I'll link actually in the show notes. We've done a specific episode on the gut-skin connection, which is really interesting, which will go deeper into this. But anything skin related, we're always looking at the gut. And when we start to address gut imbalances, eczema is a huge one that we see a lot of. We always start to see improvements in things like eczema and other skin issues. The other one, of course, is immunity. Kids getting sick frequently or taking a long time to recover from illness. So that might be, the common cold, viruses, which of course kids inevitably get because their immune systems are still developing, especially in young children. It's normal for them to get sick. Especially through the winter months. But if kids are constantly getting sick and are taking a long time to recover, we want to be thinking about gut imbalances and what we can do to improve gut health, to improve immunity. We know 70 to 80% of the immune system is located in the gut. So if the gut is out of balance, the immune system is going to be affected. And we're also talking about things like recurrent infections. So kids that might be prone to things like croup or ear infections or tonsillitis, that falls into this sort of category as well. And the other side of the immune system is, of course, that more overreactive immune system where there's allergies and intolerances present, even if they're not digestive linked or food linked allergies and intolerances. So let's say, we're in spring at the moment here in the Southern Hemisphere. So let's say there's hay fever or there's dust mite allergies, so common in kids, or there's, issues with mold, where kids are, affected by mold. There might be that sort of flare up when it comes to their immune system. So that more overreactive, sensitive immune system, we also want to be looking back at gut health because the gut is where, that immune regulation sort of happens, or the gut is responsible for that immune regulation. So there's the side of the immune system that's responsible for protecting our kids from viruses, bacteria, and helping them get over those sorts of illnesses. But the other part of the immune system is that part of the immune system that regulates, that tells our body, no, this is safe. We don't need to react to this pollen or this grass or this dust mite, or it might be food allergies or intolerances. So whenever there's allergies, intolerances, or atopic conditions related to allergies and intolerances, so things like eczema, asthma, hay fever, we want to be looking at the gut as well. And then there's fussy eating, picky eating. Now, this is something a lot of parents struggle with. And of course, this is multifactorial. There's all sorts of reasons that children might be fussy or picky with food. And imbalances in the gut is a big one. So fussy eating can be driven by gut bacteria imbalances when there's an overgrowth of pathogenic bacteria or the bad guys that can lead to kids, the preference of foods that kids sort of gravitate towards being a little skewed. So those kids that are drawn to more of those starchy, bland, beige foods can often have an imbalance in their gut. And when we start to correct the imbalance in the gut, they can start to be more open to eating more variety and more healthy options. And then we've got behaviour and mood struggles. Now, as I said, we dedicated a whole podcast episode to this last week, specifically talking about anxiety and mood issues. And we talked about that gut-brain connection. You may have heard me talk about this before, but whenever there are behavioural or mood issues and even sleep issues and struggles in these areas when it comes to neurodivergent children as well, we always want to be looking at the gut. So anxiety, irritability, meltdowns, these can all be driven or exacerbated by an unhealthy or unbalanced gut. And we know that neurodivergent kids often have imbalances within their gut, and they often also have digestive symptoms. And when we start to improve those digestive symptoms, we can start to see improvements in mood, in sleep, in behaviour. So you can see as we talk about this just how powerful gut health is. And this is why I love this topic so much, because it gives us this one central place that we can put a lot of our focus into that can really improve all of these different areas: our kids' skin health, their inflammation levels, their immunity, their allergy tolerance, their eating preferences, their mood, their sleep, and their behaviour. And when we sort of talk about conventional or Western medicine, this often gets missed because conventional medicine treats these as separate issues. So if your child's got eczema, let's use a steroid cream to bring down that inflammation. When your child's sick with an infection, let's give them an antibiotic to help them get rid of that infection. When your child is having behavioural or mood challenges, let's sort of veer towards therapy potentially. And there's obviously medications that can be used as well. But rarely is the gut seen as contributing or as a big deal in these areas, unless digestive symptoms are obvious. But even then, if we're talking to our GP or our medical practitioner about constipation, for example, they're not often talking to us about how we can improve their gut health overall. They're looking at what medications can we give to get the bowel moving more frequently. So this can lead to us constantly feeling like we're treating symptoms, constantly feeling like, why has my child got all these things going on with them? And we're not solving the problem. But if we can sort of center or concentrate our attention to the gut, then we can see improvements in a lot of these areas. And I'm not saying gut health is the be all and end all to everything. Of course, if our child has been diagnosed with ADHD, improving and working on the gut is going to be a factor, but there's all sorts of other, factors as well. If our child has anxiety, improving their gut health might definitely improve their symptoms, but we also might need, some therapy or some support, from a counsellor. So I'm not saying gut health is the be all and end all, but what I am saying is when we start to make improvements in the gut, rebalance the gut, then we see improvements in a lot of these areas. And it gives us this cleaner slate as to, okay, now we've worked on that. What else can we do now, on top of that? So when gut health is out of whack, out of balance, which it is with so many kids and adults these days because of our diet, because of our lifestyle, because of the chemicals that we are exposed to in the modern world, there's often multiple systems that are affected. So this is, a real key to how we can start to look at, maybe the gut is a place that we need to sort of focus our attentions. So for example, if we see a child that is constipated and they also have inflamed skin, they have eczema, then we can think, okay, let's really work on improving that gut health. If we see a fussy eater that also is getting constant colds, then we want to be thinking about gut imbalance. If we see a child that is struggling with behaviour and they've got food intolerances, then we want to be thinking about gut imbalance. So yes, I do think that we need to be thinking about the gut in all of these different signs and symptoms of kids, and we often come back to the gut when we're working with clients and supporting families here at Natural Super Kids. But those real red flags is where there's multiple sort of systems are affected. The gut is often at the center of that. And it makes it easier to have this one place that we can focus on. If we've got a child that is struggling with behaviour and food intolerances and maybe skin issues, it feels overwhelming. Like we've got to do this for their behaviour, we've got to do this for their eczema, we've got to do this for their diet to sort of manage these food intolerances. When we can come back to the gut and have this one thing that we can focus on that can improve all of those areas. Is that making sense? I hope so. So how do we start to restore balance in the gut? So it really does come down to two things, balance and diversity. We don't have to think about those latest fads and these, comprehensive, very hard to implement and stick to protocols. Sometimes that's necessary, but often, the first step is to come back to gut health foundations, not quick fixes, not fads that you're sort of seeing advertised on Instagram or online. We've talked in recent weeks on the podcast about, parasite cleansers and this real trend to parasite cleansers and eliminate cleansers and heavy metal detoxes being really pushed in marketing. And most kids don't need things like that. They need some good foundations. So it comes down to diversity of the gut microbiome. We want lots of different beneficial species of bacteria within the gut. And it comes back to balance. All of our gut ecosystems or our gut microbiomes have a mix of different bacteria and viruses and fungi and potentially even parasites. And it really comes down to balancing that out so that there's more of the good guys and less of the bad guys, put in very simple terms. Obviously, it's more complex than that. But diversity is where we can really focus on that, getting lots of diversity within the gut microbiome. So a couple of quick tips. A variety of plant foods is one of the best things that you can do when it comes to your child's gut. So we don't need huge volumes of plant foods. I know that can be tricky, particularly if we've got fussy, picky eaters. It's hard enough to get one piece of broccoli into them, let alone, a whole plate of broccoli into them. But what I really urge you to do or encourage you to focus on is variety over volume. So if we can get more variety, and that comes down to different fruits, different vegetables, different grains, nuts, seeds, spices, herbs. If we can put a little sprinkle of this, a sprinkle of that, if we can add a little bit of a different variety of rice into our burrito bowl, as opposed to just the white rice all the time. If we can change up the flours that we're baking with rather than just white flour, maybe we can add in a bit of spelt flour or buckwheat flour or oat flour, green banana flour. Experimenting with different flours, experimenting with different, as I said, seeds, nuts, veggies, fruits, herbs, spices, that is going to really help to diversify the good bacteria within our gut microbiome. Another really key thing that we can do that makes all the world of difference is reduce processed packet foods and increase whole foods. Now, I know that's easier said than done in our busy lives. It's one thing for us to get organized in the kitchen and with our shopping. It's a whole nother thing to get our kids to actually eat these foods. But if we can make small shifts towards less things from packets with lots of ingredients in them and more natural whole foods, fruits, vegetables, grains, nuts, seeds, meat, yogurt, those sorts of things that have less processing involved with them and less sugar, less additives. Even if we can make just small shifts in that positive direction, it's going to make a lot of positive difference to our kids' gut microbiome. This is why a lot of our kids' gut microbiomes are in such bad shape, because there's too much processed food. They're not getting that variety of plant foods. They're getting way too much sugar, way too many additives. So we need to be focusing on, slowly starting to make that shift. And the other big one is our kids' lifestyle. If we can get them outdoors more, just the very nature of them being outside is really good for their gut microbiome. They don't have to be eating dirt or anything like that. Just being outside more, the sunshine, the fresh air, the exposure to different microbes in an outdoor environment versus an indoor environment is a really good thing for their gut health. So you don't need perfection. You don't need massive piles of supplements. Small, consistent steps can make a big difference when it comes to your children's gut health and your family's gut health as well. So if your child has any of these symptoms or mix of symptoms that we've been talking about, if they have sore tummies, if they have endless bugs, allergies, they're struggling with mood or behavior, the gut is the missing piece that most people overlook. And I'm excited to let you know that I'm running a free training. If you're listening to this in real time, it's called the Proven Gut Health Approach, helping kids have happier tummies, stronger immunity, and calmer moods. We're going to go into what you can do to improve your kids' health in much more detail. You'll discover and learn my simple, proven approach to gut health, so that your child gets sick less, has a happier tummy, and has calmer moods, better sleep, better eating, all without overwhelm or, massive piles of supplements. So you can head to naturalsuperkids.com/masterclass to save your seat. You can just head to our main website at naturalsuperkids.com and you should find a link there somewhere as well, or you'll find the link in the show notes. It's totally free to come along. You'll get a lot of value. I'd love to see you there, so we can go, much deeper into this very important topic of gut health. And you'll learn not just this won't just benefit your kids, but what you'll learn will benefit your own health and all these areas that we're talking about for your own health as well. So sign up. I'd love to see you there, and I hope you have found today's episode helpful as well. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Head on over to our website, naturalsuperkids.com, for the show notes for this episode, as well as a whole heap of inspiration to help you raise healthy and happy kids. I'll see you next week.